And the first thing to do is act on the agenda.
I move that we act on the agenda as written.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Now I want to act on the minutes of November 10th meeting.
I move that we accept the minutes as written.
A second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Public comment. You guys aren't part of.
You got your own spot.
Yep.
Okay.
He's gonna
Okay.
go. Oh yeah.
Now we're moving on to new business.
So I can actually talk with you about anything that you'd like about the budget, state in general, or what's happening in terms of Green Mountain School District. I'm not sure what tact you'd like me to go after, but are there specifics or are there?
Well, what are they putting together? What is it going to
Jeanette's
look
got a
like
question over there.
tax-wise?
I think it would be valuable, because I've heard it a little bit before, to remind folks, particularly since people will watch the recording after, is to talk about how little our district budget has to do with the education tax rate that finally gets shoved at us from Montpelier.
Yeah, I think probably the easiest place to start without going into a ton of detail is the idea that folks have that if the school budget goes up by $1 million, that's coming directly from the local taxpayers. The way that the state of Vermont works is that if our budget goes up by $1 million, that goes to the state, and then they actually raise that from every taxpayer in the state. It's equally paid for. The same is true. So it's great if we're trying to raise the costs in the district, if we're trying to purchase new things or have more people, because that cost is distributed over everybody in the state. It's miserable if you're trying to cut taxes locally, because if we cut 1 or 2 million, that cut is distributed again across everybody in the state of Vermont, and so the impact locally is very minimal. You had a couple of years, actually the state did, where taxes have been incredibly high. They've jumped astronomically, but very little of that was due to what the districts across the state were actually doing. 2 years ago, that huge increase that sparked the governor to work on Act 73, which is the redistricting effort, that was actually caused by legislative action. They went out, they did a big weighting study and said, hey, some of the students, depending upon their local circumstances, require a little bit more money to educate equitably to their peers than other students. So we want to give them a weighting, we want to give them some extra money. It was a really good idea. It was bounded in good research. But the problem was, at least from my perspective as a district leader, is it wasn't really needed because the districts were doing pretty okay with what they had at the time. It added $100 million to the education fund to be able to provide the additional funding for that weighting. And we all saw what the impact of that was. It was a huge increase in taxes across the state of Vermont. Last year, the thing that the state did was it kind of hid where the real cost increases came from. When you pay your school taxes, you've got the money that's going into the education fund, right? That's directly related to what the schools need, but that's impacted by the common level of appraisal in the towns, right? So your common level of appraisal, if it's 80% here in Andover, that means that you're only paying for 80% of what the state feels that the grand list is worth, and so they're going to charge the taxpayers in Andover taxes on that extra 20%. CLAs are down across the state. They've been headed down, which means every time they go down, your taxes go up. Of the increase that Andover saw last year, 2/3 to 3/4 of it was due to changes in CLA. It had nothing to do with what the schools were doing. The state kind of hid that a little bit. They added a new calculation into the formula. They called it the statewide adjustment. And so what it did was it hid the CLA so that you couldn't compare what it was to previous years.
Just for clarity for anyone listening,
Yep.
CLA is common level of appraisal.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm going to need, usually, it's kind of funny, usually Vermont taxpayers know their tax codes pretty well, which is pretty impressive considering how complicated they are. And so we're coming into this year, and what I put out for you is a really brief overview of the early draft of the Green Mountain budget. They're looking at a 4.4% increase overall. This is what's called the level service budget. In other words, the towns were great. They came out. They supported the districts last year. They voted in the budgets that allowed us to buy back the staff that was cut in the previous year. And so this year we've got what we need, so we're just trying to preserve what we have. And obviously with inflation being a little bit above 3%, we've got mandated increases that we have to pay for the contracts that we have with the staff, right? The teacher step increases, those sorts of things. The costs do go up from year to year when you're level service, but it's 4.4%. I can't tell you yet what tax rates will be. We won't know that until we get further information from the state that comes out in the December 1st letter. But if you want me to come in and do a presentation, a full one, I'm happy to come in, put a slide deck together and talk about what the actual tax impact, potentially will be because of this draft budget that we have.
Where has the consolidation, where's that headed? Whatever became of that?
So, gonna start kind of a little bit at the beginning and then kind of get to your question. The idea of the consolidation came out of this concern that, hey, 2 years ago we had this huge increase in taxes. We've got to do something, and yes, the state does. And so they pulled folks together. They went out and looked at some research in terms of what other states did and said, hey, maybe one of the ways that we can save money is instead of having all these small schools and all these smaller districts, we can actually combine schools and we can combine districts, and that'll end up with an impact across the state that's going to bring the taxes down. Because remember, in our state, unless all the districts or most of the districts are cutting, you're not going to see a decrease in your taxes the way that things are set up. They went out, they pulled together a plan. They actually, in the final legislation, shied away from the things that would actually allow them to save money with it because of the political pushback. Part of that original idea was, we're going to consolidate schools, we're going to shut down some of the local elementaries, combine them into bigger ones. And that historically in the state of Vermont does not go over well with Vermonters. So they shifted to this idea as well, the savings will come from going from 119 school districts down to somewhere around 13 or 14. And the savings will come from the savings from central office. Well, the reality is that when you have these gigantic school districts that are covering, 800-900 square miles, you are not going to be able to manage the 32 schools on average that are in those areas with just a minimal central office. You're going to have to bring in a whole new layer of middle management to be able to keep things going the way that they were. So there's no cost savings there. The only piece of the legislation as it currently exists where there would be cost savings is the minimum class sizes, which would require a reduction in the number of teachers across the state. I did a calculation on it. The data was actually hard to find, which means that the state probably didn't bother to do the calculations. Based upon their minimum class sizes, what their menu is for how those class sizes should be, if we go with it, you're looking at 1,400 teachers cut across the state of Vermont, which is significant. So that one piece would save money. Where things have landed right now is the legislature said, okay, we're going to appoint this redistricting committee. Their job is to get together and spend 8 meetings together and come up with 3 redistricting plans, 3 different ways to break up the districts in the state of Vermont and combine them together into larger districts. At about their 6th or their 7th meeting, they came back and said, look, what you're doing is very short-sighted. There is no evidence that any of these things that you are asking for are going to save any money. Further, they certainly are not going to improve the academic performance of the students. And so what they said is, number one, you need to slow things down. This needs to be at least a 10-year project. One of the things that they are recommending is this idea that there's this BOCES project. BOCES is a collective. It's a group of districts that decide that they want to get together and share resources, especially around special education. Everybody puts in a little bit of money with the hopes of being able to buy, specialists and provide training at a reduced cost. And so their idea is, well, since the districts are already kind of forming these groups already, why not set up a system to incentivize them to combine their districts into one? And so that's kind of the recommendation that is out there right now. So 10-year timeline, use the BOCES model, these collaboratives that are coming together anyway, these districts that are sharing resources anyway, and incentivize them to actually combine into single districts. The other piece of this, the incentivization, comes from actually providing construction funds, because there's at least $6 billion in needed repairs in the buildings across the state of Vermont. And so what they're saying is these consolidation efforts are likely going to fail without being able to renovate or build new buildings. And so the thing that they are envisioning is, we're going to give you construction funds to help you repair, renovate the buildings that need it. But we also want to push you to create regional high schools. And there's a lot of good with the idea of regional high schools, but it's not going to be something that's going to save money. What it will do is it will improve academic achievement. When you have a large high school with 1,000, 2,000 students that are in it, you get to take the benefit of the economy of scale. So you can have the right number of teachers, you can afford specialists, you can afford extra programs that you otherwise could not provide in a smaller setting, and the students end up with just a much better education. You can expand your athletics, your extracurriculars, your after school. And so that's kind of where they are at. The governor is upset because, and he is correct, it didn't really meet the mission that he set them to, but at the same point in time, it is a well thought out plan. Again, there's the way that they are playing it doesn't really save much in terms of tax money, because they are saying, well, we want to consolidate high schools into these regional high schools. Yeah, well, there's not a whole bunch of high schools around the state of Vermont to begin with, so it'll be a minimal amount of closures to regionalize. So the only savings piece that is still there that would actually save some money is that minimum class size piece.
And where are we at with that? Because I've heard rumor that there are classrooms that are 3 to 5 kids. Am I correct? I know when my children were in school, there was one classroom that was one child, and I thought at the high school level, I was like, what is that all about?
Yeah, I would say no. I think in our district, looking at Ludlow, Mount Holly, and looking at the smaller elementary schools, you're probably, I think the smallest class size is probably 9. But it depends on the school, it depends on the class. When you have small schools, what you usually end up doing, it's a pattern that played out in my other district as well, is you'll have a class of 9, you'll have a class of 22, you'll have a class of 16, and it'll bounce around all over the place. They had combined grades, and we still do that if the classes are small. With academic achievement being a priority of the board and a priority of the state, those combined classes typically do not produce the academic achievement that you get with single grade classes, especially in mathematics. You can get away with it in English, but with mathematics, where it builds on itself from year to year, if I've got 3rd and 4th graders together, they're really only getting half the math time each.
Where does Vermont stand mathematically in the nation?
In terms of overall performance?
Yeah.
It's hard to tell, and the reason that I say that is because there's a mismatch between what the state of Vermont expects us to teach and what their tests. When that state testing, right now it's the VCAP, it was SBAC, it was NECAP, they change it every couple of years. Those are criterion reference tests. What they're supposed to be doing is they're supposed to be tied to a set of knowledge that we're supposed to be imparting on the children. And so if that connection isn't there, if what we're teaching or what they're telling us we're supposed to teach doesn't relate to what the test is actually prioritizing, then your scores are going to be lower than they should be. And I think that one of the reasons that you see the scores low across the state of Vermont is because that's evidence of the fact that the test is mismatched to what they've told us
I have a
we need to
question.
teach.
Why is that the case at all?
Which piece?
In other words, why would you be ever teaching kids? Why are they mismatched? Why does that happen?
The Assistant Secretary of Education said it. When they set up to create the VCAT, they had two committees. They had the curriculum committee on one side. They had the committee that was creating the items and whatnot for the test on the other side. The two never spoke to each other.
Why haven't they corrected that?
I believe they are trying to work on it now that they've recognized it. Yeah.
Because I've heard a study that Vermont is very low in the nation on mathematics.
Yeah.
Very low, like in the 13th percentile or something.
If you look
Am I correct at that?
it's
We're
possible.
close,
Yeah.
I know that.
But if you look at the smaller, the elementary schools that we have here, our elementary schools are pushing 65, 75% proficiency, which is very high for the state of Vermont. High school is middling. High school is about where all the other high schools are. They need to actually, and something I've been having a conversation with John about, they've got to change their master schedule. They're using a 90-minute block, which is great for some courses. It's great if you're in science. It's great if you're in art. They are notorious for impacting math grades. It's just too long a time for the kids to be able to consolidate what they're learning. So that's one of the things that he's going to be asked to kind of work on with his staff for the remainder of this year, so that next year they can switch over to something a little more suitable.
And John is the principal.
John's the principal. Sorry about that. Yeah, it's a good question.
That's high school.
I'm happy to answer anything that you got.
Yeah. Well, those are just I was blown away by that statistic when I heard about it, and I didn't read it. It was given to me.
Some of it too is it's the small school piece. Like 2 years ago, when they were cutting staff to try to get the budget down, right, so that hopefully taxes would go down, which didn't happen because the system doesn't really work that way. They didn't even have enough math teachers after those cuts to be able to teach the full cadre of courses that a high school is supposed to teach. Basically the junior and the senior math. And so again, part of it, especially at the high school level, there's another piece to this, and that's the size. If I go back to Massachusetts, I've got a high school of 1,300 kids. I've got AP programs, that are starting sophomore year. I've got a pre-AP program that's preparing the students for it. There's just so much more in terms of resources because of the economy of scale. And so much more you can provide in terms of experience for the kids in a larger school. Yeah. These schools do great for the sizes that they are, but there's a lot that's lost when you don't have that economy of scale. So I like that regional idea for the high schools that they have. Not going to save money, but it's going to do wonders in terms of academic achievement if they can pull it off. Yeah.
How far would kids be traveling to do that?
What was
are we
the
feasibly?
What is our mileage? You said it.
Is there a cutoff as to how far they would even allow them to?
So there were two things that the committee, and make sure I don't miss the first part of your question. There were two things that the committee did not define. One of them was the threshold for sparsity. So in other words, do we keep a small school running if it's by necessity because the population density is so low in an area? So they never defined, what that cutoff or what that threshold is for making that decision. The other threshold that they had not defined yet is, what's a reasonable amount of time to travel. And it was interesting. I met with the two chairs of the committee. They were having kind of an open forum to talk about these things. And, their gut was telling them it was 45 minutes. And then the response from all the superintendents was like, well, you realize that, we routinely hit 45 minutes now. if not exceed that.
Right.
And so, our district's like if you combine all of TRSU, it's probably about 160, 170 square miles. The districts that they are talking about making in our region to hit the numbers that they're shooting for is closer to about 900 miles, 899, 900. So imagine the size difference.
It's like a run.
That's like four times
Right.
the size we are now.
So they would expect kids to drive to Rutland if they're in the high school.
Yeah, question.
Yeah. Well, if they do the regional school piece, right, the idea is that they're going to build big, brand new regional schools that are close to the center. Again, it's still going to be a long drive time, but it should cut it down a little bit. But I don't think Southern Vermont, most of the research that they looked at when they were coming up with these plans was done in cities. Right, so this will work in Chittenden County. They didn't spend a lot of time thinking about places like us where we only have 6 students per square mile here in Windsor County.
Right. Yeah.
Susan's hand is up there.
Susan?
Hey,
Oh, can't hear you.
You're muted.
You're muted.
oop. You've got to take your mute off on your end. So.
You can hear me now?
Yeah,
I can hear you now.
Yeah.
I've always been confused. I mean, my secret suspicion is it's not really workable to have a state-funded education for the whole state and have some people have school choice and have some people not have school choice. And a few years ago, I never would have said this because I always thought it was important for, local kids to develop an identity and go to the local school. But at this point, since they're thinking about, throwing the local business completely out, I just always wonder, has there ever been a conversation about just having complete school choice to any public school, since we're all paying for them anyway, and just sort of let it all get sorted out and let people vote with their, I know that, there will be constraints of transportation, but there's plenty of parents that would be happy to drive anywhere, and we're all paying for the same thing. So I just feel like they skipped that. Maybe that's just naive, I don't know, but that's what I secretly think when I hear all this conversation.
So we did, they haven't talked about that exclusively. Most of the time when they talk about school choice at the legislature, they narrow it down to a very narrow definition of independent schools. When we did send a community letter to the redistricting committee, we did talk about the need to expand school choice. One of the things, though, that I want to throw out there, because there's actual numbers that go along with it, is when we were doing the budgets last year, especially on the Ludlow Mount Holly side, one of the things that we did, because they already tuition all their kids out after 6th grade, right? They go off, they get to pick which schools they go to, they go off. The reality is we did one budget where what would the cost be if we shut down all the two schools in Ludlow Mount Holly and tuitioned everybody, right? And then you just have the central office kind of managing things. It would have been more expensive. The taxes still would have gone up. And so it's not necessarily going to save in taxes if that's the goal, but it might have an impact a little bit on academic achievement, with the assumption that people are going to choose what they figure are the high-performing schools. So you're going to get that economy of scale. You're going to get people moving into those areas, sending their kids there. You're going to end up with larger schools that can then afford to do more on behalf of kids. But the other reason that school choice idea is really, really good is because we know how important it is for parents to be involved in the education of their children and to be able to show up and be a part of those school communities. And if they're allocating your students, your children, to schools that are very far away so that you never have time to go there and participate in what they're doing, that's not a good thing.
Right.
And so that's one of the reasons to advocate for the greater school choice if they start to go to these larger districts. You'll be able to set things up that way so that your children would be going to what's most convenient to the parents, whether it's being close to work or being, whatever's closest to home. So no, they haven't, except for talking about school choice in terms of independent schools as a part of the Act 73 legislation.
Yeah.
Yeah, so good question, good thoughts too.
Yeah. Does anybody have any other questions? Do you want to add anything?
You want to say something about the PCBs?
What about it?
Where we're at?
How the state failed?
Yep.
So that the schools are safe. On the positive, we are one of the schools that got tested. We know it's there. We're taking care of it, and we know that it's at safe levels. That is not true at most of the schools across the state.
Is it at safe levels for all the students or at different areas for different students?
There are a couple of areas where they have a threshold for the lower grades that it's too high for. But once you hit a certain grade level, I think it's grade 7, what's allowable goes up, and so it's safe. So it's safe for the upper grades, but some of the rooms are not safe for the lower grades.
What is that? Where is that determination, and why is it age? Why does age come into it?
The amount of your body mass determines how concentrated. Right? If I'm small or I'm large and you're small, and we're breathing this stuff in at the same concentration in the air, it's going to build up in your body and be a much higher concentration, much faster than in mine. The reality, however, though, is being someone who actually worked in environmental science in my early years, the state levels are way off the mark of what the federal levels are. The federal levels are much different. The state is much more stringent in terms of what they put into place. So the school is up and running. The state was supposed to come in with a remediation plan. Remediation is really only remediation if they actually remove the stuff and replace it with non-PCB laden materials. We did some additional testing, and the problem with the PCBs is that they outgas, right? The hotter it gets, like in the summertime, the PCBs are released into the air, and then they come in contact with all the other surfaces in the building. And over the course of 50 years, which is about how long that building's been there, those other materials absorb them. And so we've got contamination in areas that are above and beyond the original sources, which they believe is the caulking around the windows. They've offered to come in and replace the caulkings in the windows, but not really to touch any of the other places that have that secondary contamination. The problem is if they do not do that, if they don't get it all out of there so that it's just naturally at a level that's below the action thresholds, they are always going to have to be running the filters, and they're always going to have to test. Even if they seal it into place, which is one of the ideas we had early on, right? If it's soaked into the cinder blocks and the walls, we'll just paint over it with epoxy paint and seal it in there. Well, that's great, but because it's still in existence in a place where it's not supposed to be, you will always have to test, and you will always have to have the filters running.
Have they ever done a study at the school of how many children may have been affected by it? How many kids? Because we do have quite a few kids in our district that have had some serious medical issues that could be attributed to this.
So the thing with PCBs is, if it were me starting out and doing a study, I wouldn't have gone to testing in the building. I would have gone to the Department of Health and said, what do you have happening for diseases? Do you have spikes in certain areas?
There are spikes in our area.
Yeah, and so that is usually an indication that, because sometimes you'll have the contaminant in the environment, but it's not necessarily getting into the organisms in the environment. The problem with PCBs is that the diseases that you get, the impact that it has is varied. Some chemicals, it's like, oh, you got that type of cancer, that's 99% that's from. PCBs have such a varied profile, it would be hard to tell. But no, I'm not aware of them having done any studies on what the impact on on human beings and kids would be. I'm concerned about having them at the high school. I would be much more concerned about having them at the elementary school.
Have they ever checked like the White Houses when they had a White House there or any of those buildings for PCBs?
I am aware that they did come in and they did check the other schools and PCBs were not found.
So, but not to cut you off, but in the beginning of this, we got 3 years ago. When
You were here then,
Yeah.
so it's your fault.
Yeah, the state emailed us and said if we got into testing by a certain amount of time, that they would pay for all the fixing, everything. Well, then they decided they weren't going to after they said they were going to, and we got into the testing in the right time and did everything spot on. They backed out and said, well, it's too expensive, we don't have the money.
So
We can't help you.
They put 35 million. Well, they originally started, there was no money they put aside to help districts remediate. The first year they realized they had opened a Pandora's box. They put aside 35 million. Of course, rebuilding Burlington was what? So it took up every penny. The second year they were going to put in no, and then when it politically looked bad, they put in 9 million. So they are not putting aside the money to be able to remediate. It's gotten even worse that some districts like ours have actually gone out. We're in a class action lawsuit ourselves against Monsanto. I'm hoping with the additional testing and showing where the contamination is, we can get the whole school.
And you're in a class action lawsuit against Monsanto for
At this point in time, I'm trying to get replacement of the high school, full replacement of the whole school.
because I'm trying to.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on that?
So because of the idea that we just spoke about is that the only real way to remediate the problem is to remove it completely.
But you're saying that Monsanto is responsible for the PCBs.
Correct. Monsanto was the only company that was still producing PCBs at the time that these buildings were built. And so they are the only company that the state of Vermont sees as responsible.
Yep.
So we have a part of a class action lawsuit with Linden and Blackman that's against them. My guess is Monsanto is going to probably settle at some point in time, and then we'll share in the settlement. But here's where the state has come in. They passed some legislation that basically says, hey, if we helped you out with your PCB problems in your school, if you win the lawsuit and receive any money, you have to pay us back for what we gave you.
Wouldn't it serve the school well for this lawsuit to look into how many students actually have had some odd or different health problems that could very well be associated with this?
I would say if there are people that have that belief, I'm actually happy to talk with Lyndon and Blackman and see what's helpful. Let me write that down because I'll reach out and give them the connection. But if there are people out there that believe that the health issues that they are suffering are because of exposure in the schools, I would bring it forward. But I'll ask that specific question.
I happen to know she's retired now, but I happen to know a oncologist at Dartmouth that thought that this is worthy of being looked into because of the amount of patients that she had at the time that all had the same type of illness, and it's unheard of for children to get it. So
When I was in that school, or when I was in kindergarten, we were in that school.
yes.
So like I said, I worry about all. I worry a little bit more had it been in the elementary schools because it's not all the classrooms at the high school, right? So if you're a high school student, you move from class to class, you spend a limited amount of time in each of those classrooms. So your exposure is going to be less than if you're an elementary student who sat in the same classroom with it all day long, or the teacher.
Right.
Those would be the people I would be most worried about. The teachers, long-term teachers that spent their careers there in one of the classrooms. That would probably be the most telling.
Well, I wonder about the White Houses just because of the way they're built, and they're built with a lot of that type of structure.
Yes.
So children that spend a lot of time in those buildings that are young and they spent their whole 6 years of elementary school going into the White House for 3 different classes.
I don't know what year that was built.
It was put in.
It was put in, but not super long ago.
It was not when you were.
Not when I
no,
was a kid.
it was put in
It's
when my
gone
kids were
now.
in school.
It flooded.
What
and
year
it's
did you
gone.
graduate?
02.
I distinctly remember the smell of that building.
PCBs have a very distinct smell.
Yes. Almost like Bondo, almost like
Yeah.
plastic. And I distinctly remember in asking that very question, this does not smell like a healthy environment.
Yeah.
Part of it, I can find out the age of the building, the Chester Andover building. I think that's the one we're talking about, the white.
Yeah.
Got destroyed in the flood. Because the age will tell us everything that we want to know.
Right. It just is, it's something, well, in my case, it's very important to me to know these answers or have answers to these questions, but also because I've seen the devastation of so many families that have had children that have had these odd illnesses, and then we hear about PCBs and it seems like that really needs to be addressed, and I don't want to see more children going through, or adults, but children are more susceptible, so we don't want to see more children having to.
Well, I think that, you talk about the other push for the new regional high schools. You're gonna. The findings have been primarily, I believe, in the high schools the last time I took a look at the limited testing that they did. But it's an opportunity to get rid of those old buildings. There'll be some a little bit of savings too, just because the new buildings are much more efficient. But a lot of it is, like I said, they've got $6.6 billion in repairs across the state to do in terms of the buildings that they have, and that's not including the PCBs. That's just general deferred maintenance. So
I have a question. So if they decided they were going to make new high schools everywhere, where does that money come from to build the new high schools?
comes from the taxpayers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How is it that I just don't, for some reason I don't understand this. So how is it that the amount of money, say this budget goes up, if people vote against the school budgets going up, in this area, ravenously vote against the school budgets going up. So what you're saying is even if the school budget goes up, it doesn't actually affect our taxes.
No, there's a $2.7 billion education fund that we all pay for equally, right? So equalization, that's the whole idea. So your $10 million budget's a drop in the bucket. I mean, it's probably, 0.1%. So what you do here has minimal impact on the overall scheme of things. Kind of the way to think of it is that there's some money that funds education that comes in from taxes, like room and meals tax, they tax marijuana, that sort of stuff. When you go out to vote in March on your school budgets, if you vote yes on your school budget, what that does is it generates a bill that goes to the state. And so when all the towns are done voting, the state collects all those bills, adds it up and says, okay, this is the amount of money that we have to raise from the taxpayers. They collect it equally from all the taxpayers, and then they send it to the schools. So like I said, what you do here, it's so diluted amongst all the other taxpayers in the state, the impact is minimal. In the old days, it was true. Massachusetts still runs that way. If they got a $45 million budget, that all comes from the town.
Right.
But here, it's not that way.
It's not that way.
Yeah, it's just,
So our taxes are literally from the state.
you have no control over them.
Nothing,
really.
right.
I might be able to make a 1 cent or a 2 cent difference with major cuts. But the problem is you could cut like I said, you could eliminate your schools like in Ludlow, but if the other districts around the state, if the costs are going up, your taxes are still going to go up.
Still gonna.
Yeah.
So we're paying across the board for every school in the state, not just for our own
That is
schools.
correct.
Yeah,
Which is particularly painful for a town like Andover, because literally we get nothing.
Yeah. There's
I mean, I don't know how many kids, the last count, that actually went to schools.
35-ish.
Right.
even if you had no kids, that's
Still have to pay.
Right, you still have to pay. I get that part of it.
Yeah.
The other thing I would ask you too, and I say this completely respectfully because I don't think it has anything to do with you, But listening to you talk about all of the different committees and the boards and the legislature and all of the different people think tanking it, from my point of view as a regular citizen, I think to myself, that is the most crazy, out of control, too many spoons in the soup. Nobody knows what anybody's doing, and no one will agree because nobody wants to admit nobody knows what anybody's doing.
Want to be on school board?
No, but is that, am I
Yes.
right? Or is there something wrong with me? Or does that,
No,
that's the way it
No,
seems.
it's that way.
You know what I mean? Like, how does that even come to pass? I don't understand.
There's two pieces to it. Like
Again, respectfully, not having.
Oh no, you're fine. The taxes are too freaking high. Excuse my language, but they are in the state. But the people that are making the decisions don't understand how taxes in the state of Vermont work for education, right? When I guarantee you, the folks that when the legislator passed, what it did in terms of the weighting study, if they recognized how much it was going to cost people, they never would have touched it. They didn't realize what the impact was going to be. You're going to get impacted again like that in a year or so, because they're also going to start to change special education. They've changed the funding mechanism like 2 or 3 times now. They're going to change the funding mechanism to a weighted mechanism, just like they did 2 years ago that caused all your taxes to go up. So you're probably looking at another big jump in taxes because of the weighting of how they pay for special education. But again, they don't have the connection, and I got that when I was talking with folks about the redistricting. In the legislatures, they're well-intentioned. They mean well, but they don't understand how ed funding works, and they're the first people that admit it. And so you end up either with people making decisions about
Look
things,
at my mouth. My mouth is hanging
things
open.
that they don't know,
Right.
or they rely on other folks to tell them what to do, which opens them up to manipulation. And
Yeah.
I'll leave it at that.
Because I mean, looking at the state of Vermont, it's not like we have 18 million people paying taxes in Vermont. We don't. What do we have? 680 something thousand people, and most of them look like us, like regular people. So I guess it's just it's shocking to me that there is this like oversight of human beings who are not. They don't like how are they making decisions if they don't understand? How do they not know?
Well, the system is set up for people to, if I were a businessman and not a business person in education, what's the lever in the system? The lever in the system is we ask for as much as we humanly can get because everybody else is paying for it. And so imagine that mentality from 52 districts across the state. That's what happened when they started to talk about the weighting studies. People looked at it and saw the loophole and said, wow, we can actually increase our ask from the taxpayers by 10%, and we're not going to get docked anything for it. When they originally set up the weighting piece. But again, when you open up those levers, people will use them.
Yeah.
The only way for taxes to go down is for, like I said, all or the majority of the districts to reduce costs if they can. Right? Mm-hmm. If they don't do that, it doesn't make a hill of beans difference what you do locally.
And class size is one of the biggest ways to reduce the cost.
Class size being because it would require a cutting of employees. So I'm not saying I'm for that, but I'm saying of that Act 73 redistricting piece that they put together, that is the only piece of it that might actually save.
And have they thought about, like, has it ever occurred, well, I don't know, has anyone thought about taking, you've got one year you've got a class size for, I don't know, first grade that is diminished in one of the schools, and taking that first grade teacher and putting it at the other school for the next year, and kind of having floating teachers wouldn't.
Yeah, we usually we have.
The idea? I know that sounds really hard and crazy, but it's easier than a bunch of kids floating.
It's I'm gonna speak from this one. It's very hard because you got some schools in some towns that don't want to give up having their kids leave their town to go to a different school.
Well, I'm not thinking about the students leaving. I'm talking about the teachers. What about the teacher going to the bigger school that has more of a class size for the next year? I'm not talking about the students going.
Oh yeah.
What about that? What about something as simple as that? I mean, we're not losing a teacher, but we're putting the teacher in a more needed place.
Usually if you get a population bubble, right? Mm-hmm. So you've got low, high, low.
Right.
As the population is moving up, usually you're shifting the teachers around to follow the bubble. Is kind
if they're qualified.
Kind of what you do if they're qualified. Yeah. Right now, and this is the issue, right? You know, if you still have all of these schools, all these tiny schools, you're never going to be able to get to those class size minimums, right? Because you just can't do it. There's not enough kids
It
in
just
schools.
won't happen.
The only way to get there is to start to close some schools, consolidate the students into a larger building, and then you know you can do that with fewer staff, up to a point. But,
And in our school district, the elementary school, Chester Andover, is overcrowded. The high school is underutilized. Cavendish is underutilized. Ludlow is underutilized. And I think Mount Holly's over.
Ludlow's under, Mount Holly's over. Mount Holly's pretty good, pretty packed. But Ludlow, the school's in better shape.
Yeah.
The physical facility.
But as in numbers of kids,
You know,
it's low.
yeah. So the other piece is, you know, the question comes up is, you know, why aren't you pursuing closing schools? Well, the politics are incredibly ugly. No one's going to survive it. But more important like that, it's not going to save any money under the system that we have.
Right. Yeah,
If all districts close a school or two and consolidate, then taxes will go down. If one or two do, it's not going to change your taxes. You may save a penny or two.
But it also sounds like with all of the people at the top who are stirring all their pots, it kind of doesn't matter what we do.
No. No, everybody, the reason it has to come from the legislature is because they're the only body that can make all districts do the same thing,
Yeah.
right? And again, the only way to get the taxes to go down is for everybody to cut. And there's systems tend to fall just naturally into kind of their lowest, what they call their lowest energy state.
Yeah.
They're without actually changing the number of schools, there's not a heck of a lot of savings to be gained, right? And so people, at some point in time, they're going to have to balance that feeling for their local community schools versus what they're paying in taxes and decide which is more important. And I think that's a part of the angst that's happening now is people are stuck in that grind of trying to make that decision. I don't want to pay higher taxes, but I also want my local, you know, my community schools. You know.
all right.
But
Thank you.
If there are specific questions or things that you want me to present, especially, like I said, December is when we get a little bit closer to knowing tax rates. I'm happy to come back and do like a real presentation. And all I got to do is ask. I'm happy to. Yep.
This is I say this all the time. This is the guy that's going, hey, there's an issue with all this. Look at me, look at me. This is the only superintendent we've ever had that's done that.
Yeah.
So
No, I appreciate
Yeah. Thank you.
all the
Yeah.
different questions.
I'd like to see the PCBs addressed. That's my bet.
Well, I'm hoping, like I said, the Monsanto. I'm hoping the lawsuit is. I think there's by the summertime there's some decisions they have to make about whether they're actually going to move forward with the case or just settle. My guess is they're going to settle because it's going to be cheaper overall. But then again, like I said, the state passed that legislation where, hey, you know, if we've given you any money, like for the filters we're running and for the testing, they're going to want
When
that
did you
money
start
back.
running those filters? Just out of curiosity.
Before my time.
yeah, before
I think it was a year, probably a year before I came.
It's just a couple of years ago.
All right.
This
Yeah,
is
thank
the
you.
little
Right,
primer on
that's-
taxes overall. It may or may not make sense, but
Thanks.
well, we have some copies. Right?
All right. Thank you so much.
Not a problem.
Thanks.
Nice to meet you too. I'm sorry I left everybody depressed.
No?
No, you
It
didn't.
wasn't my.
leaving too. You left us informed.
That's right.
I know.
Thank you so much.
Informed.
Yeah.
We're moving on to the road commissioner's report, and the road commissioner is not here, but I did speak with Charlie. Which truck is it? It's down? It's Charlie's
The
truck. What do
regular,
we call it? The
Charlie's
regular?
truck. T19.
It needs a new radiator. There is some sort of noise going on in
Thank you,
the.
Lane.
He believes in the. Well, they thought it was in the transmission, but they thought it was fixed, and then brought it back, and the noise is still going on. So it's gone back to the shop. The radiator itself is a $4,000 item. It's going to be a. That's all I have to report that I was
Alright.
told. Do you have any more on that?
I don't have any more on that. I have another sort of highway road update. So VOSHA apparently must be more actively out doing surprise visits, and we got one. That was, a little over a month ago. So there were some physical fixes that needed to happen in the garage, and the guys did those right away. As far as signage, we ordered another flammable material storage cabinet. The big thing that we had to do that we're working on is have a hazard communication program. So what that is it's a binder, and the Vermont League of Cities and Towns thankfully has model hazard communication programs. So Charlie and I looked through what was available, got all the documents, customized them to our town garage and situation. So we got everything printed out and in a manual. What we are in the process of doing, or I'm in the process of doing, is they had to inventory every single thing in the garage, make a list of anything that has any kind of chemical in it. So anything from your toilet bowl cleaner to your road paint to your any kind of fuels, windshield washer fluid, any of that stuff, they had to have a very complete list. And we have to have what's called a safety data sheet for every single one of those things.
MSDS.
So, yep. So,
Task.
and they had a binder of MSDS sheets,
Right.
but what used to happen is when you ordered something like that, it would just get sent with the product. That doesn't happen. They make it available online, so you sort of have to think, ooh, this is something I haven't ordered before, and you need to make sure you have your safety data sheet. So they went through everything they have, and I am online, product by product, downloading safety sheets for everything that we have over there.
So crazy.
It seems like from the advice that we got, we can have that available electronically as long as it's readily and quickly available to someone who might have been exposed or might have hurt themselves with one of those things, and so they know what to do. So our plan is I have folders set up by what they are and by brand so that it's easily searchable. Right now I'm just downloading the sheets. I may make it like an index that's a spreadsheet so it's searchable, which would make it a little faster to access the information should it be needed.
Would it be in the future would it be feasible to go with like a industrial safety? There's different places out there where you can buy everything from it, and then the safety data is right there. It's on whatever it is you buy. So I'm wondering if would it make it easier if you bought from one entity as much as you possibly could?
Right. And
So that you're not-
Charlie and I have talked about too is some of the sheets that are available seem pretty old. So he and I, anything, okay, you've got 20 of those and you use those? Great. What about this? I saw one on the list and it seems like I can't find a sheet for it. Can we just
Not use it.
appropriately dispose of it so that it's not on our list anymore? We don't have to find an old sheet for it.
But also just working with one company that can supply us as
right.
a supplier so that you can open up your...
As much as possible, yeah.
I know the reason I say that is we use a company that we order a lot of things from, and right there, when you
Right,
order
and all your
it, it's
sheets.
all right there, so
Yeah.
it makes it easier. So maybe even just compiling a list
Right.
of
really trying to order from
the same
fewer
fewer,
places.
keeping the cost down.
Right.
But if you have a rep, then you can keep the cost down by having a rep that will also look out for your costs.
Right.
Just an idea. But that is quite a task. That is quite a task you're dealing with right now.
And Jeanette, was there something on salt? Or something came up this last week? I saw an email from you. I'm trying to remember what it was exactly.
Yeah, so Charlie was hoping at your last meeting to have had you go ahead and approve that he could at least order from Cargill. We were
Right.
still waiting for a more fixed price from Appalachia.
Okay.
It's going to be quite a bit higher. But what we needed to do was I needed your permission to sign off on the estimate that we got from Cargill so he could go ahead and place an order. So, and you and Robin both said it was fine, so that's what we went ahead and did.
Good.
And I have not heard back from Charlie whether he's heard any more of a firm price from Appalachia and how willing they would even be to deliver to us.
His feeling was that it was going to be quite a bit more no matter what,
Yeah.
even if they did.
And I was looking at, so in the past, so the state has a whole website where they reach out to in a variety of areas to try to get the best possible pricing for municipalities. And salt was always one of the things that they reached out to all the companies and got best possible pricing. And this year, the companies that did were only selected certain areas where whether they had a facility to store it there or it was only a certain distance from their storage facility, so there were only limited municipalities that could take advantage of their pricing. But even that pricing was exactly in the range that we received independently when we reached out.
Okay.
So it's,
Didn't make
I don't
sense.
think well, we couldn't. We weren't one of the towns that they were even willing to deliver to. So we're doing best with what we have. We were also, I asked Charlie to reach out to Sam Shaves because I don't remember seeing anything in writing about I think the verbal understanding we had from David Shaves about winter sand for next winter. So I will email her to follow up, but I'd really like an email that says, yes, we are gonna make sand, you can, and if I thought they were planning to stick with the same price, but I wanna verify that.
Right. That's what I had understood.
And also plan for it to be that 3,500 rather than the 2,500. That seems like
Right.
that is what is needed.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll take
Thank
off
you.
my road commissioner hat now.
You did a
Thank
good
you.
job, Road Commissioner. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to the MERP. We're in the process of getting together the paperwork to put this out to bid.
Yes.
There's a lot of different things and a lot of different portions of the grant itself that have to be addressed in the bid process. So that's kind of where we're at. And it will be through Cindy Ingersoll, who is helping us out with it. And they're going to come up with the paperwork needed so that it can go out and cover what the MERP wants to see in the grant, in what we're asking for when we're doing the bids, but also making sure that our procurement policy is being followed. So that's kind of where we're at with that. We do have the drawings. I can't remember what they're called. What are they called? TV, right?
This is wording.
It's, yeah. They're the drawings of each building and exactly what they're going to do for each building.
The blueprints?
To me, they're a blueprint, exactly, but there's a different word for them. And so we have that information, but we don't actually have the writing for exactly what it is we're asking for to put out to bid, because we do have to cover what the MERP wants in there, the MERP grant itself wants in there, and is all, and what we as a town want to see. So that's where we're at with that.
Okay.
I expected. I had asked that it get done sooner than later so that we can get the bids process going.
Yes.
We'll see what I hear back on how long that'll take. So, anything you want to add, Jeanette? No. Now we're moving on to budgeting.
Are we budgeting with just the three of us or 4 of us?
Four.
Yeah, there's 4 of us. Hey, Susan, you ready to do a little budgeting? Can't hear you.
Is there another copy of the?
I think I have it. I don't know what happened to the other. There you go.
I'll grab this one. Might I make a suggestion?
Please.
I went through today kind of with this in mind of what could we look at, should we look at, knowing the things that we'd want to put off a little bit longer. I would feel okay about going through some of the income things that we can see where we're at this point, almost halfway through the year. I would like to have you decide which meeting in December you want to set the executive session for to discuss wages so that could be budgeted, and whether it be The 22nd is the second meeting in December, whether you want to wait and do it at that meeting or the first one on the 8th. Up to you guys, but just so I wanted to throw that out there.
The 8th meeting is our next meeting.
I'd rather do it on the 8th only because I worry that on the 22nd there may be missing members. You never know. Somebody might need to
Yeah,
go.
I agree. Sooner the better.
So,
Okay, so we'll set the executive session so you can talk about wages and then appropriately budget for that at the next meeting.
yes.
Great. I emailed Julie Hanson Chester to ask about the emergency services assessments, and she said they wait until at least the end of November to really get 11 out of the 12 months of call numbers and things like that. So she may have something to us for that meeting as well, to help that budgeting process. And then road materials. I'm all for waiting till January, at least the first meeting in January, and we usually push salt off till it's like one of the last things, just so we can see where we're at. Not that any 2 years are ever the same as far as weather goes, but, and then certainly at some point, just chatting about that very last section of monies that we budget for to move into the highway bridge and the capital equipment funds and the cemetery fund. So, I actually want a pencil, I'm sorry. So, in terms of, under the category of other income, if we want to start there, I know it's kind of in the middle. These are all line items under the other income. Typically what we've done is looked at the total and budgeted an overall total, because some of those dog licenses usually run about the same number every year. Marriage licenses fluctuate. Permits fluctuate based on a lot of factors. Who's getting building permits has to do with other prices and things. So I feel like, if last year we ended up with $7,400, we're at 24. I feel like we could comfortably budget for $5,000 at least for that group of items.
Okay.
But if you guys disagree.
Are we required? We're required to do each line item though.
No, we don't budget line by line for that group of other income. We literally budget for a total.
Okay.
Because it's all random.
Right.
Right. It is quite a series of random things.
Yeah, so
So
5,000 looks,
Does 5 seem okay? And we can certainly
Susan, you good with 5,000?
I'm good with 5,000.
Sure.
Okay.
Kind of swinging back up to the top. So state gas tax income. I think we've kept it at 90,000 out of concern for, if more people are using electric cars, is there less state gas tax? But, we're well on our way to going to be above $90,000. We'll be at 96 just like last year. So would it make more sense to budget that for 95?
Sure.
Sure.
We don't want to undercut ourselves, because the less we think we're going to get, then the more we end up having to but get from municipal taxes.
Right.
The municipal tax adjustment has to do with, we get something back from the state for people who received municipal tax credits. This year it's obviously quite a bit higher than it has been. But even last year we got 11,000, and this year we've only budgeted for 9. So I feel like that could be, I don't know, I don't want to go too high, but 14 or 15, 14.
How about 1450? 14.5?
Or is that, last year we only got 11. So again, do we want to go? I'm a little torn. The big old guessing game.
In between is 15, Basically, that's in between the two. Between 11,000 and 17,000, I think is,
Yeah.
there's 6,000 there. Maybe
Yeah,
it's
that sounds
14.
right.
I'm sorry, it's 14.
Oh, 14.
14 is sort of in the middle.
All right, maybe 14. Current use, you can see last year was 44, this year's 46. So I would think getting us to at least 44 would make sense.
Interest income. Do we still have a lot of interest-bearing accounts?
We do, but interest rates have gone down and they just went down again. And obviously we're gonna end up at well, if they keep going down, we won't even hit this 6,000 that we budgeted for, it looks like. So I don't know, do you wanna go to 5,000 on that?
Sure.
Sure.
Obviously not as many land transactions since the pandemic. So again, I don't even know if we're gonna hit that 8 that we've now budgeted for. I mean, do you wanna try for like 65? And we can always adjust that in the next month if we see a difference or see that we're gonna get closer than we thought. Does that make sense?
I like it.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yep.
In my opinion, it's still a little early to look at heat because we really only had one delivery and we've all only had our heat on for about a month.
What about telephone, internet?
I mean, those we can see where we are now because those don't fluctuate a lot month to month. Let's see, 26 for the office looks like it could be just about where we end up if we want to leave that one the same. The garage, 750 and 750, 15. Yeah, leave it the same and we could always reduce it a little, but
To 18?
yeah, put it at 18 for now because we did end up at 17 last year and those costs aren't going to go down, certainly.
And the town hall?
I think that needs to stay at 500.
Okay.
I wonder if we're going to end up with any extra added expense through doing the renovations to the town hall, like for the heat and the electricity and things.
That's a good question.
Yeah,
I would think the electricity, if they're plugging things in
Yeah.
over there, for sure.
that might be something we want to look into. We might want to ask Shelley that, what her thought is.
I mean, we'll definitely see an uptick, I would think.
Could be a big one.
Unless
All
they're
three
bringing,
buildings.
bringing
Bringing generators.
like, generators to do their stuff
Yeah.
with.
That might be a question we,
Right, so you're meaning for the work they're doing.
the work they're doing, right?
Right.
Are they going to be running our electricity or are they going to be running?
Right, if they have the heat on
Yeah.
over there, will they be in and out?
The heat would be a big thing, people
Yeah.
coming in
I think we
and
need
out.
to, that's
Yeah,
just,
for sure. Yeah, especially since presumably they're going to start and it's still going to be, chilly in the spring, into the spring.
right.
Yeah, so those would be.
it might be something we want to ask. We'll put that into our questions to ask.
Oh, for your Wednesday meeting.
Yeah, I think it'll be a pertinent.
No, that's a good point. So we don't know about assessments yet. I don't have any word on what the, well, VMCTA looks like it'll be $90, so top of page 3, the dues, the very first section. So we already knew VLCT because they tell us VMCTA is the municipal clerks and treasurers. I would say 90 for that. VALA, I think, are gonna stay at 50. That's the Listers Association. And the Regional Planning Commission already told us that They would be $812.24.
Good to know.
I don't know if you want to put a stab at repairs and maintenance or what you guys are thinking.
Again, the repairs and maintenance in the office and town garage and the town hall, how much of that is going to come under the
Right, if something
MERP
happens,
grant
are we
and-
going to sort of roll it in with,
Right,
since we'll have
you
people
know.
on the ground here fixing things?
I just wonder how much of that grant is going to fix any other lighting issue that we might have, or, well, we could put it in here, but it could change.
So you think
We'll have to do
leave
it
it
anyways.
flat?
I would think
I'm kind of
perhaps
thinking leave it
flat,
flat.
Mm-hmm.
and then
Yeah.
hope that in subsequent years enough things have been upgraded that the maintenance will be lower.
Right. Or that we may not even meet that next year, just
Right.
because it will be.
Yeah, we wouldn't initiate a lot of, we just shouldn't even think about initiating anything till we see what's going on.
Good point.
So then we get to trimming and mowing. This year we had to ask them to stop mowing because we were over budget. But what was it that threw us over budget for that?
Cemetery.
The cost of the cemetery mowing increased
Right.
more than we had expected it.
Even though it was
Or-
a drought.
Right, and they stopped mowing in August,
Mm-hmm.
and we had a drought, and they stopped mowing. Yeah. So where are we going to be at? We're going to be at least at 2,700, which is what we spent last year, actually, which is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure why we reduced for this year when we knew we spent 2,700 last year. That's interesting. What
So-
made us think that?
Do we want to do 2,700 this year?
Yes, and I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think everyone was talking about this would be a year we should be going out to bid for all of that again,
Yes.
lawn mowing stuff.
Is it, or did we do a 2-year bid
Well, this is the second year on the cemeteries
on
for
the
sure.
cemeteries? Okay. Yeah.
Cleaning, it looks like we're on track to, we could leave that flat.
Okay. Trash removal? We had a little spike in it. Why is that?
I don't know what you mean by a spike.
Oh no, I'm looking at last year's.
Looks like 25, I don't think their price has gone up. 25 should be adequate, or, we can do 26 just in case.
Okay.
I don't know.
Architect won't leave a lot of extra, they'll take their
They'll
trash
take
away,
the,
won't they?
it'll be part of, well,
I
it
would
won't
think
be
they'll
them,
have,
it
I
will
would
be,
think they'll have a special dumpster
well,
because construction debris is a whole other animal.
Yeah.
I'm gonna.
Good question.
That's a good question. I'm gonna make sure that we address that in our bid, when our bids go out, the trash. It's a really good question. Okay. Uniforms?
Costs have gone up. And
A little,
although it looks like we're only, we still got another month in December, a month to go until we're at half of the year.
Right.
So I would think leaving it at 32 would be prudent.
Safety and medical equipment.
We've spent a lot this year.
We had to buy that cabinet,
Right.
but half of it was paid for through a safety grant. So you see that in our income line as opposed to the expense. So that is more.
But are we gonna have more expenses from the OSHA thing?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
They did the one.
Additional cabinets or?
No, we got everything like that they suggested, and any of the physical things that needed to be fixed. The guys fabricated and they needed something for the torch setup that they have.
Okay.
So Daryl made something.
Nice.
So do we think we can keep that at 1,000, or just because those shelving units were, the storage shed was?
Right, that was the extra $975,
Right.
really. Yeah, we could.
Highway material, we have to wait on that, don't we?
I would. You want to do it all in one fell swoop?
No.
Yeah, I mean, some of it's, we won't buy any more culverts this year, but. And I don't know, I mean, 7:45, I don't know what you guys,
We probably also want input from the road commissioner on some of these
On
things.
some of these now that we're, right.
yeah. And we did get all the administrative ones done last time. And it'll be a, good conversation to keep talking about how much money everyone feels should be set aside. And I think it would be good to have, Chris here as well to
Yes.
discuss that with you guys. Okay, so I'll set an executive session for the next meeting. So that then we can get the wage piece done for the next next time, or at least after the next time.
Right.
We might have numbers from Julie by then, so yeah, making good progress. Okay.
All right, so we're gonna move on to financial orders.
So we have a quote from the company that has been printing our town report for us for many years, and I think we talked about it briefly about printing and mailing versus just having them available. Their quote is about $300 higher than it has been. So I did reach out to another printing company, and they came back with an almost identical quote when all was said and done. So I just wondered if I would like your permission to go ahead and stay with the same company and use the quote if you want to officially vote and say that it's okay to do
I
that.
move that we have Jeanette use the original company.
Second.
Exactly.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. There's one report in there which might not look familiar. It's from Jonathan in his role as the lister. It's called the Errors and Omissions Report. When any change is made to someone's grand list value after the grand list has officially been lodged. If you remember the Hearns, their value was brought down for the reasons we talked about in the Board of Abatement. So that's what that form is for, and it needs to be signed on the back by every board member.
Right.
It's all part of public record. We put it in the grand list to say this is, why the change was made and that you all are aware of it. We've been holding off because we weren't sure if by now we would know something about the case with the Fishers, but
Just anywhere here.
Move slow.
Go with me.
it does. It looks like from the last invoice we received that either one side or the other has applied for a continuance to the court. So it's just an
And
ongoing.
we don't know which one.
I couldn't tell by the invoice and I didn't reach out to ask.
That would just cost more money.
Well, exactly.
It's done. All right, let's see what we got here.
So Jeanette, you need all of our signatures on that, not just some of our signatures.
Yeah, that would be great. I mean, if you at some
Yeah,
point.
I can stop and do it. Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. And I can keep the financials out for you to look at too if you'd like to in the minutes, because you've been here.
Yeah.
Okay, super. Yeah, I'll keep a folder right here for whenever it's convenient.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to move on to correspondence. We did send out the letter to Tom Garden at about the solar array, voicing our concerns. I think all three of us have read it. Susan, did you get a chance to read the letter?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah, okay. Does anybody have any questions about that? No? Okay. I did receive an email back saying that he would be following the rules and regulations in which he is to follow.
Okay.
I'm hoping that he shares our letter with the landowners, and that we maybe get some of our questions answered. Does anyone else have anything else to add to this? I have had some people in our community ask me, what's going on and how do we, showing disapproval of the project. So what I have said is that they should voice that, and I understand that there's some 45-day, I don't understand exactly how it all works, but there will be a time where we could either have a meeting in regards to it. I don't know if it's a town meeting or that there is some way for everyone to get together and
Have conversation.
have conversation.
And that, within that 45-day period, where we would be communicating with the state that oversees this, the state commission that oversees all of this, as far as our concerns?
I don't know.
Okay.
That's
I'm
a
not
good
clear
question.
about
I'm
how
not
that
clear
works.
about any of it, honestly.
Okay.
Jason would know.
That's my initial memory of what
Yeah.
was said, was that we will have the opportunity to provide our thoughts from the town on the project, on the proposed project, but that we're not the deciders.
So it may be that we've sent it to Mr. Garden, the letter. It may be that in that 45-day period, maybe we send it to the state.
Yeah.
Well,
And anyone else
we get
should-
notice, and then there's a 45-day
Right,
period.
but that's when you would
That'll
send
have
it
the
to
information
the
then.
state, and anyone else probably would have the opportunity to do that then too.
Right.
But we've also sent it to Jason probably, right?
Yeah, he was.
Jason was
yeah.
on, yeah.
Yeah.
But you're right. It did sound as though, in the end, we aren't the deciders.
Right.
We are not the deciders. Our opinion is, it depends on who you're speaking to, because I have been told that yes, indeed, they do listen to what the select board
Taken into consideration.
consideration. And also the landowners
Sure.
in the area, and the taxpayers in general. So, I guess it's kind of a sit and wait and see what comes next and go from there.
What's in that folder?
That's
Well,
it.
I'm
Copies
pretty
of those
certain
letters.
that almost nobody in Andover knows about this except maybe a few people in a certain neighborhood. But I've been kind of conflicted about saying much of anything about it to anybody. I don't know. There might be a time when we really should make sure that people in town know about it.
Yeah. There are a few people in the neighborhood that know about it that have voiced an opinion to me personally. And I wasn't sure where to go with that.
Yeah.
At this point, I'm going to make it very clear to everyone that they should maybe send a letter to the select board or an email and voice their opinion instead of just coming to me.
Right.
Because it's a great heavy burden to have on my shoulders,
Also, it's much more official.
and it's more official. And
Right.
yeah,
Well,
so
okay, maybe I'll talk to you about it out of the meeting, but I mean, I have not tried to, I'm not sure. I mean, there's a lot of people, I'm sure, who would have strong opinions about it, like in other parts of town, but literally they don't know about it.
Right.
right.
I think during that 45-day period would be
Right.
the right time to, or at least a good time to let everyone know.
What means would we, like, kind of get people to know about it? Just talking one-on-one to just people we know?
I think you can do I think there could be a town meeting put together, or
That would
I
be-
understood that you could, that it wouldn't necessarily even be the select board, it would just be in general, but I don't know because I haven't seen the official paperwork because I don't.
Maybe it's a little premature to strategize
Right,
to do.
right.
But yeah, I mean, I think people in town, maybe he would like to come back and be part of a presentation to everybody, not just the select board.
Perhaps.
I move that we adjourn this meeting.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.